They found her body floating in the Han River at dawn. At least, that's what the news reported. But the woman they buried wasn't her. The real Amara Bennett was standing in the shadows of the funeral, watching Seoul's most dangerous man weep over an empty coffin. This is the story of how a Nigerian maid survived her own murder, brought down a corrupt empire, and made the untouchable Kwon Ji-hun fall to his knees.
Stop right there. I need to tell you something that's going to make you uncomfortable. Last month, I spent 3 weeks crafting a story about a woman who sacrificed everything for someone she barely knew. Poured my soul into it. And you know what happened? It died with 200 views because people like you, people who got hooked, who felt something real, they watched, they felt, and they left without subscribing. So that story? It never reached the single mother working 3 jobs who needed to hear it. It never found the immigrant feeling invisible in a foreign country who would have seen herself in those words. Your 2-second decision to skip that subscribe button literally determines whether stories that make you feel something survive or die. So here's your choice. Hit subscribe right now or be the reason the next person who desperately needs this story never finds it. I'll wait.
The Shilla Hotel's Phoenix Hall glittered like a jewel box on the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival Charity Gala. Seoul's elite gathered under chandeliers that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Amara Bennett moved through the crowd like smoke. At 26, she had perfected the art of not being seen. She was one of 20 servers hired for the night, the only black woman among them, which somehow made her even more invisible to the guests who looked through her as if she were made of glass. Her uniform was crisp and white, borrowed and too large, cinched at the waist with safety pins hidden beneath her apron. Her natural hair was pulled back in a tight bun that gave her a headache. Her feet ached in the cheap flats she'd worn through at the heels. But she smiled. She always smiled. In South Korea, a foreign worker couldn't afford not to. "Champagne, sir? Madam?" she murmured in practiced Korean, her Nigerian accent barely noticeable after 3 years in Seoul. She had come to South Korea on a factory worker visa, one of thousands of African migrants seeking better opportunities. The factory had closed 6 months ago. Now she worked 3 part-time jobs, cleaning offices at dawn, serving at events like this, and night shifts at a convenience store in Itaewon. Her visa was expired. Her younger sister Zainab back in Lagos was depending on the money she sent home for university tuition. She couldn't afford to be noticed. She couldn't afford to make waves. But God, she was so tired. Near the center of the hall, beneath a massive portrait of Sejong the Great, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations dropped to whispers. Heads turned. Kwon Ji-hun had entered from the VIP corridor. Even Amara, who avoided Korean news and kept her head down, knew that name. At 34, Kwon Ji-hun was chairman of Baekdu Holdings, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in Asia, and, according to whispers among migrant workers, head of the Gwangju faction, the most brutal organized crime syndicate in South Korea. They called him Bingo, the White Tiger. Beautiful, rare, lethal. He was tall for a Korean man, broad-shouldered in a perfectly tailored black suit. His face was angular and cold, with sharp cheekbones and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. When his dark eyes swept across the room, people instinctively stepped back. He was accompanied by 2 bodyguards built like mountains, a beautiful assistant in a red chi-pao, and an elderly woman. The elderly woman was the only soft thing in his orbit. She was tiny, dressed in a traditional hanbok of pale green silk embroidered with cranes. Her white hair was pulled into an elegant bun, and she moved slowly, leaning on a carved wooden cane. Her eyes were cloudy with age, confused by the noise and lights. Amara watched as Kwon Ji-hun bent down to murmur something to the old woman. His hand on her elbow was gentle, and for a brief second, his face softened into something almost human. Then it was gone. The group moved toward the VIP section, but the elderly woman stumbled. Her cane slipped on the polished marble. She lurched forward, her small hand reaching out for balance. She grabbed onto the nearest thing. Unfortunately, that thing was the train of a dress belonging to Madame Seo-Yeon-hee. Madame CEO was the wife of a National Assembly member, a woman whose face had been surgically perfected and whose heart had been surgically removed. She was holding court with a circle of socialites, laughing loudly and showing off the diamond necklace her husband had gifted her with embezzled public funds. The elderly woman's grip on the dress train pulled it hard. Madame CEO stumbled backward, her champagne glass flying from her hand. The golden liquid arced through the air and splashed across another woman's ivory Chanel gown. The hall went silent. Madame CEO spun around, her eyes blazing. She looked at the elderly woman, who was now on her knees, apologizing in a trembling voice. "Jo Songhemnida, Jo Songhemnida," the old woman whispered. I'm sorry. Madame CEO's face twisted into something ugly. "Do you know how much this dress costs, you senile old hag?" Amara's blood went cold. The elderly woman looked up, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. She was disoriented, frightened. I didn't mean." The floor moved. The floor moved. Madame CEO's voice was shrill, mocking. She looked around at her friends for validation. They laughed, cruel and sharp. "Maybe your brain moved, grandmother. Maybe it fell out of your skull." Across the hall, Amara saw Kwon Jahun freeze. His head turned slowly, mechanically, toward the commotion. His face didn't change, but something in the air did. It got colder, thinner, dangerous. He started walking toward the scene, but he was 30 feet away, and the crowd was thick. Madame CEO wasn't finished. She leaned down and grabbed the elderly woman's chin, forcing her to look up. "You're going to clean this mess up with your tongue, old woman. Get down on your hands and knees and lick my shoes clean." The elderly woman whimpered, and Kwon Jahun stopped walking. Amara watched in horror as he stood completely still, 20 feet away, watching. His bodyguards had moved to intervene, but he raised a single finger. They froze. He was waiting, testing. He wanted to see if anyone in this room of 400 people would help his mother, because that's who the old woman was. Amara saw it in the way Kwon Jahun's jaw tightened, in the way his hands curled into fists. That was his mother, and he was using her humiliation as a litmus test for the souls in this room. Amara felt sick. Madame CEO pushed the old woman's shoulder. "I said get down." The elderly woman began to lower herself, her arthritic knees shaking as they approached the cold marble floor. Amara didn't think. She thought of her own grandmother in Lagos, who had raised her after her parents died. She thought of the way her grandmother's hands had shaken with age, the way strangers had treated her like garbage in her final years. She thought, not again, never again. The tray of champagne flutes hit a nearby table with a crash that made everyone jump. Crystal shattered. Expensive alcohol pooled across white linen. Amara was already moving. She crossed the distance in seconds, her cheap flats slapping against marble. She dropped to her knees and slid between Madame CEO and the elderly woman just as the old woman's knees touched the floor. Amara caught her, wrapping her arms around the frail shoulders, holding her up. "Don't," Amara said in Korean, her voice shaking but loud enough to be heard. "Don't you dare touch her." The room gasped. Madame CEO's mouth fell open in shock. A server, a foreign server, speaking to her? "Excuse me." Madame CEO's voice was a dangerous whisper. "Do you know who I am?" Amara looked up at her. In that moment, she wasn't scared. She was furious. "I know exactly who you are," Amara said, her Nigerian accent thickening with emotion. "You're a bully. You're a coward. And you're humiliating an elderly woman who did nothing but accidentally brush your dress." The gasps were louder now. Madame CEO's face turned crimson. "How dare you? Someone call security. Get this foreigner out of here." But before security could move, a voice cut through the air like a blade through silk. "Touch her, and I will remove your hand at the wrist." Everyone turned. Kwon Jahun had closed the distance. He stood 10 feet away, his face a mask of cold fury. His voice was soft, but it carried the promise of violence. Madame CEO's anger evaporated into terror. "And Mr. Kwon, I didn't know. You didn't know that was my mother?" Kwon Jahun's voice dropped even lower, more dangerous. Does that matter? Would it be acceptable to brutalize an elderly woman if she wasn't related to me? Madame Seo opened her mouth, closed it. No answer was safe. Kwon Jahun walked forward until he was standing directly in front of Amara and his mother. He looked down at Amara, and for a moment, their eyes met. Amara had never seen eyes like that. They were black holes, endless, cold. But somewhere in the depths, something flickered. Recognition. Respect. He reached out his hand. Amara flinched, but he wasn't reaching for her. He was reaching for his mother. Yama, he said softly, gently. Are you hurt? The elderly woman looked up at her son, her confusion clearing for a moment. Jahuna, this girl, she caught me. The floor was falling. I know, Yama. I saw. Kwon Jahun helped his mother to her feet with infinite care. Then he looked at Amara, who was still kneeling on the floor, her white uniform stained with champagne from the broken glasses. He extended his hand to her. Amara stared at it. That hand could sign death warrants. That hand had probably killed people. But it was steady, waiting. She took it. His grip was warm, firm, and he pulled her to her feet effortlessly. He was much taller up close. She barely reached his shoulder. What is your name? He asked in Korean. Amara Bennett, she whispered. His eyes narrowed slightly. You're Nigerian. It wasn't a question. She nodded. Your Korean is excellent. Thank you. Kwon Jahun turned to Madame Seo, who looked like she might faint. Mrs. Seo, I believe you owe two people an apology. I'm sorry, Mr. Kwon. Not to me. To them. Madame Seo looked at the elderly woman, then at Amara. Her face was a mask of humiliation, but fear won out. She bowed stiffly. I apologize. The words were poison in her mouth. Kwon Jahun's smile was colder than winter. I don't believe you. But it doesn't matter. You won't be attending any events in Seoul again. I'll make sure of it. Madame Seo went white. Kwon Jahun turned back to Amara. He began removing his suit jacket. Before she could protest, he draped it over her shoulders. It was heavy, warm, and smelled of expensive cologne and something else, sandalwood, maybe. Come with me, he said. Sir, I have to work. I'll lose this job. You already lost it the moment you knelt down. Kwon Jahun said matter-of-factly. He looked at the hotel manager, who had appeared, sweating and pale. This woman is no longer your employee. She's with me. Send her final pay to my office, plus a month's severance. The manager nodded frantically. Amara's world tilted. Wait, I don't understand. Walk with me, Kwon Jahun said. It was phrased like a request, but it was clearly a command. His mother took Amara's hand, squeezing it gently. Thank you, dear. You have a kind heart. Amara had no choice. She walked out of the Phoenix Hall with Kwon Jahun on one side and his mother on the other, leaving behind 400 stunned guests and the shattered remains of her invisibility. She had no idea she had just signed her own death warrant. The car waiting outside was a black Genesis G90, armored and sleek. One of the bodyguards opened the door, and Kwon Jahun helped his mother inside first. Then he gestured for Amara to enter. Amara hesitated on the sidewalk. The September night was cool, and the jacket around her shoulders felt like a chain. Miss Bennett, Kwon Jahun said quietly, I am not asking you to trust me. I am asking you to get in the car before someone takes a photo of you that will ruin what's left of your life. Amara looked around. She saw phones being raised, flashes going off. The paparazzi who lurked around these events had noticed the commotion. She got in the car. Kwon Jahun slid in beside her, and the door closed with a pressurized thump that sealed them away from the world. The interior smelled of leather and jasmine. His mother was already settled across from them, humming softly to herself. As the car pulled into Seoul's nighttime traffic, silence filled the cabin. Amara sat rigidly, her hands folded in her lap. She was hyper-aware of Kwon Jahun beside her, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. What is your status in Korea? He asked suddenly. Amara's stomach dropped. I have a visa. An expired visa. It wasn't a question. You're working illegally. Amara's hands clenched. She said nothing. Relax, Miss Bennett. I'm not going to report you. I'm going to fix it. Amara's head snapped up. Why? Kwon Jahun looked at her with those endless black eyes. You protected my mother when 400 people, including dozens of my own employees, did nothing. That kind of courage is rare. Loyalty is even rarer. I'm not loyal to you. I don't even know you. No, he agreed. But you're loyal to your principles. That's more valuable. He pressed a button, and a partition slid up between them and the driver. The tinted windows made the city lights blur into abstract art. My mother has dementia, Kwon Jahun said quietly, looking at the old woman who was now dozing against the window. Most days she thinks she's still a young woman in Gwangju, before the war, before everything. She forgets who I am. She forgets where she is. His voice was carefully controlled, but Amara heard the hairline fracture underneath. I have nurses. Expensive ones. But they treat her like a job. They are efficient and cold. Tonight, she wandered away because the nurse was on her phone. This is the third time. He turned to Amara. I need someone who will treat her like a person. Someone who will protect her like you did tonight. I'm a server, Mr. Kwon. I'm not a trained caregiver. I'll train you. I have doctors on staff. I'll pay for whatever certification you need. Amara shook her head. I can't. I have other jobs. I send money home to my sister. 20 million won per month. Amara's breath stopped. 20 million won. That was nearly 17,000 US dollars. More than she made in 8 months of working 3 jobs. Plus room and board, visa sponsorship, and full medical coverage. Your sister's tuition paid in full. Amara stared at him. What's the catch? Kwon Jahun's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. You live in my home. You follow my rules. And most importantly, his voice dropped. You see nothing. Hear nothing. Speak to no one about what happens in my house. I have enemies, Miss Bennett. Dangerous ones. If you work for me, you become a target. Then why risk it? Amara challenged. Why bring someone you don't know into your home? Because I watched you tonight. You didn't calculate the risk. You didn't think about consequences. You saw someone vulnerable, and you moved. That instinct can't be taught or bought. He leaned forward slightly. I'm offering you a way out of the shadows, Miss Bennett. No more expired visas. No more sleeping 3 hours a night between shifts. No more invisibility. But the price is your silence and your loyalty. Amara looked at his mother, sleeping peacefully now. She looked so small, so fragile. Amara thought of her own grandmother, of the way she died alone in a Lagos hospital because Amara hadn't sent enough money fast enough. She thought of Zainab, brilliant and 19, whose university dreams were dying because tuition kept rising. She thought of herself, exhausted and invisible, always one immigration raid away from deportation. I need to think about it, Amara whispered. No, Kwon Jahun said. You need to decide now. By morning, your face will be on every news site in Seoul. Foreign worker confronts elite at charity gala. Immigration will have your name by noon. You'll be deported by Friday. Amara felt the trap closing around her. Unless, Kwon Jahun continued, you're already under my protection. If you work for me, no one will touch you. That sounds like a threat and a promise at the same time. It's both. Amara closed her eyes. She saw her grandmother's face. She saw Zainab's last email. I might have to drop out, Uni. The fees went up again. She opened her eyes. I have one condition. Kwon Jahun raised an eyebrow. You're in no position to negotiate. I want to finish my nursing degree. Online. At night when your mother is sleeping. You pay the tuition. For the first time, Kwon Jahun actually smiled. It transformed his face from cold to devastatingly handsome. Done. He extended his hand. Amara looked at it. Manicured, scarred across the knuckles, dangerous. She shook it. His grip was warm and firm, and he held on a moment longer than necessary. Welcome to the family, Miss Bennett. The car pulled through massive iron gates topped with security cameras. Amara saw high walls, guards with dogs, and what looked like infrared sensors in the trees. This is home, Kwon Jahun said as they approached a sprawling modern Hanok-style mansion, Traditional Korean architecture reimagined with glass and steel. It looks like a fortress, Amara whispered. It is, Kwon Jahun replied. Welcome to your gilded cage. The first 2 weeks were an education in survival. The Kwon estate was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. The main house was a masterpiece of Korean traditional architecture blended with modernist design. Curved hanok roof lines over walls of floor-to-ceiling glass, heated stone floors beneath minimalist furniture, a central courtyard garden with a koi pond that probably cost more than Amara's childhood home. But beauty was a mask for the darkness underneath. Amara's room was in the east wing, 3rd floor. It was larger than the entire apartment she'd shared with 3 other migrant workers in Itaewon. It had a private bathroom with a soaking tub, a king-sized bed with sheets that felt like water, and a window overlooking the garden. It also had bars on the windows, disguised as decorative ironwork. She wasn't a guest. She was a prisoner with good accommodations. Mrs. Kwon, she insisted Amara call her Halmoni, grandmother, was a delight. On her good days, she was sharp and funny, telling stories about her youth, teaching Amara how to make kimchi, and singing old Korean folk songs in a wavering voice. On her bad days, she thought Amara was her daughter who had died in childhood. She wept and apologized for things that had never happened. Amara learned to navigate both versions of Mrs. Kwon with patience and care. She learned that the old woman hated loud noises, loved sweet rice cakes, and found comfort in old photographs from before the war. What Amara didn't learn was how to navigate Kwon Jahun. He was a ghost. She saw him perhaps once every 3 days, always in the early morning or late at night. He would appear in the hallway or the kitchen like a shadow, his suit impeccable, his face unreadable. Sometimes he would ask about his mother. How is she today? Did she eat? Did she sleep? Sometimes he would just watch Amara for a long moment, those black eyes analyzing, dissecting, and then leave without a word. His presence was everywhere even when he wasn't there. The bodyguards who followed Amara at a discreet distance whenever she went into the garden. The way the kitchen staff bowed when she passed, treating her with a respect that made her uncomfortable. The fresh flowers that appeared in her room every morning. White chrysanthemums, her favorite, though she'd never told anyone. He was watching, always watching. But the real education came from what she overheard. Late at night, when she couldn't sleep and wandered the halls, she heard things. Voices from Kwon Jahun's study, speaking in low, urgent Korean too fast for her to follow completely. But she caught words: shipment, payment, police commissioner, disposal. She saw men coming and going at odd hours. Men in expensive suits with dead eyes and bulges under their jackets. She saw Kwon Jahun return at 3 a.m. once, his white shirt soaked with blood that wasn't his. The next morning, the news reported that a rival gang's second-in-command had been found in the Han River with his throat cut. Amara learned to see nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. But she was terrified. On her 15th night in the mansion, everything changed. Amara was in the kitchen making Halmoni's favorite tea, yuja-cha, citron tea, when she heard footsteps. She turned and gasped. Kwon Jahun was standing in the doorway. But this wasn't the cold, controlled man she'd glimpsed before. His tie was loosened, his jacket gone, and his white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the edge of a tattoo. A tiger, she thought, done in traditional style. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. "You're awake," he said, his voice rough. "I couldn't sleep," Amara said, turning back to the stove before he could see how her hands were shaking. "Halmoni had a nightmare. I was making her tea." "She's asleep now?" "Yes." Finally, silence. "Then, is there enough for 2? Amara glanced back. Kwon Jahun was standing by the kitchen island, looking somehow both dangerous and vulnerable. "Yes," she said quietly. She poured 2 cups of the golden, fragrant tea and slid one across the marble counter. He took it, and their fingers brushed. That electric shock again. They drank in silence for a long moment. "You're afraid of me," Kwon Jahun said suddenly. Amara almost dropped her cup. She recovered, set it down carefully. Should I be? Yes. His honesty was brutal. I am not a good man, Miss Bennet. I do things that would horrify you. I hurt people. I make decisions that ruin lives. I am exactly what you've heard. Then why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth. He set down his cup and looked at her directly. You're different from the others. You're not afraid to look me in the eye. You're not trying to please me or manipulate me. You just exist. Honestly, Amara didn't know what to say. My mother adores you, Kwon Ji-hun continued. She hasn't been this happy in years. When you read to her, she remembers things. When you sing to her in English, she laughs. You've given her something I couldn't buy with all my money. Peace. She's easy to love, Amara said softly. Yes, she is. His voice carried old pain. My father was the opposite. He built this empire with blood and fear. He taught me that love is weakness, that kindness is a luxury we can't afford. Do you believe that? Kwon Ji-hun looked at her for a long moment. I used to. The air between them was suddenly thick with tension. The news tonight, Amara said carefully. The man they found in the river. You should stop there, Miss Bennet. Was he one of the people you hurt? Kwon Ji-hun's eyes went cold. I warned you. See nothing. Hear nothing. I'm not asking you to confess, Amara interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. I'm asking if you're okay. Kwon Ji-hun froze. He stared at her as if she'd spoken a foreign language he'd never heard before. If I'm okay? You look exhausted. You look haunted. And nobody in this house seems to care about anything except whether you're going to kill them or promote them. So I'm asking, are you okay? For a moment, Kwon Ji-hun's mask cracked. She saw beneath it a boy who'd been given a crown of thorns and told to rule. A man who'd traded his humanity for power and was only now realizing what he'd lost. No, he said quietly. I haven't been okay in 20 years. He stood up abruptly, his walls slamming back into place. Good night, Miss Bennet. Thank you for the tea. He left before she could respond.
Pause. Just pause for a second. If you felt that, if your heart just cracked watching a man admit he hasn't been okay in 2 decades, then you understand exactly why I can't stop telling these stories. This is the stuff we don't talk about. The loneliness behind power. The humanity we hide. And here's what kills me. This story almost didn't get made because the last 3 like it didn't perform well. Translation: not enough people like you subscribed. So algorithms buried them. And somewhere out there, someone who's spent 20 years not being okay never got to feel less alone. Don't let that happen again. If you value content that doesn't insult your emotional intelligence, that treats your feelings like they matter, hit subscribe. Not for me. For the version of yourself that's tired of shallow content. Do it now, then let's watch Amara's world fall apart together.
Amara stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the empty doorway and wondering what the hell she'd just seen. 2 days later, Kwon Ji-hun summoned her to his study. The study was on the ground floor, behind a door that was always locked. When she entered, she understood why. The walls were lined with books on 3 sides and weapons on the 4th, swords, knives, and what looked like antique firearms displayed like art. Kwon Ji-hun was sitting behind a massive desk, writing something by hand. He looked up when she entered. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Amara sat, her heart pounding. He put down his pen and studied her for a moment. I've been doing research on you, Miss Bennet. Amara's blood went cold. What kind of research? He opened a manila folder and slid it across the desk. Amara opened it and felt her stomach drop. It was her life. Every detail. Photos of her arriving in South Korea 3 years ago. Records of her expired visa. Her dormitory in Itaewon. Her sister Zainab's university applications. Their parents' death certificates from the Boko Haram attack in 2018. Her grandmother's medical records from Lagos. Even photos she didn't know existed. Her walking to work, sitting alone in a cafe, teaching English to immigrant children in a church basement. How her voice broke. How do you have all this? I told you. I am thorough. Kwon Ji-hun leaned back in his chair. I need to know everything about the people in my home. It's not personal. It's survival. This is invasive. It's necessary. His voice was firm. Do you know why? He pulled out another photo. This one made Amara's blood freeze. It was her, leaving the Shilla Hotel on the night of the gala. But the photo was marked with a red circle and Korean text she couldn't read. This was taken by members of the Kim syndicate, Kwon Jae-hoon said quietly. They're rivals of mine. Enemies. They saw you leave with me that night. They've been trying to find out who you are and how important you are to me. I'm not important to you. I'm just your mother's caregiver. You live in my home. You see my vulnerabilities. That makes you a target. He leaned forward. I'm telling you this because you need to understand the danger. You cannot leave this estate without security. You cannot contact anyone from your old life. If they find out about your sister, they will use her against you to get to me. Amara felt the world tilting. Zainab, they can't. I've already taken precautions. I've moved her to a more secure university housing, under a different name. I have people watching her. She's safe. But you need to follow my rules exactly, or she won't stay that way. Amara wanted to scream. She wanted to run. But she was trapped. Why did you really hire me? She asked, her voice shaking. Was it just about your mother, or did you need a hostage? Someone you could control? Kwon Jae-hoon's eyes flashed. I hired you because you were brave and loyal. I'm keeping you alive because I don't let innocent people die on my watch. Believe whatever you want, but those are the facts. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. You are free to leave any time, Miss Bennett. But if you do, you'll be deported within days. Your sister will lose her scholarship, and the Kim syndicate will find you within a week. Here, you're protected. Out there, you're dead. That's not freedom, Amara whispered. That's a cage. Yes, Kwon Jae-hoon said, turning to look at her. Welcome to my world. 3 weeks into her new life, Amara was starting to adapt to the routine. The terror had dulled into a low-grade anxiety that she carried like a weight in her chest. Halmoni was having a good week. She remembered Amara's name, laughed at her attempts to make bulgogi, and taught her Korean counting songs. They spent hours in the garden, Halmoni pointing out different plants and telling stories about her childhood. Kwon Jae-hoon remained a ghost, but Amara had started to notice small things. The way he always asked if she'd eaten when he saw her. The way Korean textbooks appeared in her room, along with notes in his precise handwriting explaining difficult grammar. The way he'd ordered the kitchen staff to stock Nigerian ingredients so she could cook food that reminded her of home. He was considerate. In his own strange way. On Saturday night, the estate was unusually quiet. Most of the security team had been sent to handle some issue in Busan. Only a skeleton crew remained. Amara was reading to Halmoni in the old woman's bedroom, a children's book about a rabbit and a tiger. Halmoni was dozing off when they heard it. Gunfire. Amara's heart stopped. She looked at Halmoni, who was suddenly wide awake, her eyes filled with terror. The soldiers, Halmoni whispered in Korean. The soldiers are coming. We have to hide. She thought she was back in the Korean War. The bedroom door burst open. It wasn't Kwon Jae-hoon. It was one of his bodyguards, a man named Miho. Miss Bennett, come with me now. Bring Halmoni. What's happening? We're under attack. The Kim family. They breached the north wall. Mr. Kwon is holding them off, but we need to get you both to the safe room. More gunfire. Closer now. Amara grabbed Halmoni's hand, pulling the old woman to her feet. They followed Miho into the hallway. The mansion had transformed into a war zone. Alarms were blaring. She could hear men shouting in Korean. Smell smoke. Miho led them toward the west wing, where apparently there was a reinforced panic room. They were halfway there when 3 men in black tactical gear appeared at the end of the hallway. Miho shoved Amara and Halmoni behind him, raising his gun. Run, he shouted. Amara ran, dragging Halmoni with her. Behind them, gunfire erupted. She heard Miho scream, then nothing. They were lost. The hallways all looked the same, and Halmoni was panicking, pulling against Amara's grip, crying about soldiers and bombs. Halmoni, please, we have to keep moving. A hand grabbed Amara's shoulder from behind. She spun, ready to fight, and found herself staring at Kwon Jae-hun. He was a vision from hell. His white shirt was torn and blood-soaked. He had a gun in each hand, and his face was a mask of cold fury and fear. "Why aren't you in the safe room?" he demanded. "Miho. They killed Miho, we couldn't. Come with me." Now. They ran. Kwon Jae-hun led them through a maze of corridors that Amara hadn't known existed. Behind them, she could hear the attackers searching, calling to each other in Korean. They reached a door hidden behind a bookshelf. Kwon Jae-hun pushed it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. "This goes to the underground garage. There's a car. Get in it. Drive north. Don't stop until you reach." "What about you?" Amara asked. "I'm staying. I need to." An explosion rocked the mansion. Plaster and dust rained down from the ceiling. "Go!" Kwon Jae-hun shouted, pushing them toward the stairs. But Halmoni had frozen. She was staring at her son with sudden clarity. "Jae-hun, my baby. Don't die. Please don't die like your father." Kwon Jae-hun's face cracked. He pulled his mother into a fierce hug. "I won't, Yama. I promise. But you have to go with Amara. She'll keep you safe. Promise me," Halmoni whispered. "I promise." He looked at Amara. Their eyes locked. In that moment, she saw everything he'd never said out loud. The fear, the regret, the desperate need to protect what little softness he had left in his life. "Keep her safe," he said. "I will." And Amara, he caught her hand, squeezed it once hard. "Stay alive." Then he was gone, running back toward the sound of gunfire. Amara pulled Halmoni down the stairs. They were dark and narrow, clearly designed for emergency escape. At the bottom, a steel door opened into an underground garage. There were 3 cars. Amara chose a black sedan that looked least conspicuous. The keys were in the ignition, prepared for exactly this scenario. She helped Halmoni into the passenger seat, buckled her in, and got behind the wheel. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the steering wheel. She'd never driven in Korea before. She barely had any driving experience at all. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Okay, you can do this." She turned the key. The engine roared to life. A garage door ahead of them began to open automatically, revealing a dark road beyond the estate walls. Amara pressed the gas. They shot forward, tires squealing. The car burst out into the night, and for a moment, Amara thought they'd made it. Then she saw the headlights behind them. 2 vehicles. Black SUVs. Coming fast. "Oh God," Amara breathed. She pushed the accelerator to the floor. The sedan leaped forward, engine screaming. They were on a narrow mountain road, trees whipping past on both sides, the city lights of Seoul far below. The SUVs were gaining. Amara had no idea how to lose them. She just drove, taking turns too fast, praying they wouldn't fly off the road. Halmoni was silent beside her, clutching her seatbelt, eyes wide. One of the SUVs pulled alongside them. Amara saw the passenger window rolling down, saw the gun. She yanked the steering wheel hard to the right. The sedan slammed into the SUV, metal shrieking. The SUV swerved, crashed through the guardrail, and disappeared over the edge of the mountain. I'm sorry. Amara was sobbing now, adrenaline and terror making her shake. The second SUV was still coming. Ahead, the road forked. Amara had no idea which way to go. She chose left, praying. The road began to descend, getting steeper, narrower. She was going too fast. Way too fast. The SUV rammed them from behind. The sedan fishtailed. Amara fought for control, but the car was spinning. They hit something. A tree. The airbags exploded. Everything went white and silent. When Amara came to, she tasted blood. Her head was ringing. The windshield was cracked, spiderwebbed with fractures. Halmoni, she croaked, turning. Halmoni was unconscious, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead, but she was breathing. Footsteps, crunching on broken glass. Amara looked up through the shattered window and saw them. 3 men, guns drawn. Out of the car, one of them said in Korean, "Now, or we shoot you both in your seats." Amara's door was jammed. She kicked it once, twice. On the third kick, it flew open. She stumbled out, her legs barely holding her weight. The men grabbed her, dragging her away from the car. "Please," she begged in Korean. "Please, the old woman. She needs a hospital." One of the men backhanded her across the face. Pain exploded. She tasted blood. "Shut up." They pulled Halmoni out of the car. She was awake now, confused and terrified. "The White Tiger's whore and his mother," the leader said, grinning. He was young, maybe 25, with cold eyes and a scar across his cheek. "Boss Kim is going to be very happy." "I'm not. I'm just a caregiver." "Sure you are." The scarred man grabbed Amara's face, forcing her to look at him. "We watched you, little rabbit. We know you live in his house. Sleep in his bed." "I don't." "We know he cares about you. That makes you valuable. And once we send him a video of what we're going to do to you and his mother, he'll come. And then we'll kill him." Amara's blood turned to ice. The scarred man pulled out a phone, started recording. "Hello, Biko," he said in Korean, grinning at the camera. "Say goodbye to your family." He nodded to one of his men. The man raised his gun, pointing it at Halmoni's head. "No!" Amara screamed. She didn't think. She lunged forward, throwing her body between the gun and Halmoni. The gunshot was deafening. Amara felt nothing, then everything. Fire in her chest. She looked down, saw the blood spreading across her shirt. "Stupid bitch," the gunman muttered. Amara's legs gave out. She collapsed, the world tilting, darkening. Through the gray haze, she saw Halmoni crying, reaching for her. Saw the men dragging the old woman away. Heard the scarred man laughing. "Leave the African. She's dead anyway. Put the body in the river. Let the White Tiger find his precious Maid floating face down." Darkness swallowed her. But Amara Bennett was not dead. Not yet. Amara woke up to pain. Pure, blinding, white-hot agony that radiated from her chest to every nerve ending in her body. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Her throat was raw, closed. "Easy, easy. Don't move. You're safe." The voice was speaking English with a thick Korean accent. Amara forced her eyes open. The world was blurry, unfocused. She was in a room. Small, concrete walls, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. Medical equipment beeped nearby. A face swam into view. An old man, maybe 60, with kind eyes behind thick glasses. "Who?" Amara croaked. "My name is Dr. Park Jiangsu. You are in a medical facility. Unofficial. You were shot." Memory crashed back. The attack. The car chase. The gun. Halmoni. Halmoni. Amara gasped, trying to sit up. Pain exploded. She screamed. "Stop. You'll tear the stitches." Dr. Park pushed her gently, but firmly back down. "You took a bullet to the upper left chest. Missed your heart by 3 centimeters. You've been unconscious for 4 days. For days. Where is she? Where is Halmoni?" "The old woman. They took her." Dr. Park's face darkened. "I don't know. I only know about you because a fisherman found you on the bank of the Han River 3 days ago. You were barely alive. He called me instead of the police because, well, because people like us don't call the police. People like us. People who help those the law has abandoned." Dr. Park adjusted her for. "The fisherman is North Korean defector. I used to be a doctor in Pyongyang. We understand what it means to be invisible." Amara's mind was racing. "They threw me in the river. They thought I was dead. Does anyone know I'm alive? Only the fisherman and me. And now you. I think maybe it is better this way. The people who shot you, they are very dangerous. If they know you survived, they'll finish the job." Amara closed her eyes. Think. She saw it then, the impossible plan forming in her mind. "Dr. Park, I need your help. You need to rest." "No, I need to disappear." It took Amara 2 weeks to recover enough to move without screaming. 2 weeks in Dr. Park's underground clinic, which served defectors, undocumented workers, and people hiding from gangs. During those 2 weeks, Dr. Park told her what he'd learned from his network. The attack on the Kwan estate had been brutal, but ultimately repelled. Kwan Jahun had survived, but barely. 6 of his men had died. His mother had been taken. The news had reported that Mrs. Kwan's body had been found in the Han River along with an unidentified foreign woman, believed to be a domestic worker. There had been a funeral. Closed casket. Kwan Jahun had wept openly, they said, which was shocking. The white tiger didn't cry. Amara watched the news footage on Dr. Park's old TV, her heart breaking. He thought she was dead. He thought both of them were dead. But Halmoni wasn't dead. Amara could feel it in her bones. The Kim family had taken her alive for leverage. They wouldn't kill her, not yet. Which meant Amara had time. What are you thinking? Dr. Park asked, bringing her soup. I'm thinking about how to bring down an empire, Amara said. She'd had a lot of time to think. A lot of time to plan. The Kim family had made a mistake. They'd left her alive. And they'd underestimated her. Because Amara Bennett, the invisible Nigerian maid, had spent 3 weeks living in Kwan Jahun's house. She'd overheard conversations. She'd seen documents left carelessly on desks. She'd learned the names of corrupt police officers and politicians on the Kwan payroll. And now, dead and with nothing to lose, she was going to use that information. I need to get to a computer, Amara said. And I need a phone. Can you help me? Dr. Park looked troubled. What are you going to do? Something very stupid or very brave, Amara said. Probably both. Amara's first call was to a journalist. Not just any journalist. Investigative reporter Choi Hyejin, the woman who'd been trying to bring down organized crime in Seoul for a decade. She'd written extensively about the gang wars, about police corruption. Amara had seen her business card on Kwan Jahun's desk once, with a note in his handwriting, dangerous. Monitor closely. Amara found Hyejin's number through an internet search at a PC Bang, a gaming cafe where she could be anonymous. Who is this? Hyejin answered in Korean, suspicious. My name is Amara Bennett. You don't know me, but I have information about the Kwan and Kim crime families. Information that could bring them both down. Silence. Then, where are you? They met in a small cafe in Hongdae, far from the territories of either gang. Hyejin was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, dressed in a blazer and jeans, a recording device already on the table. Amara told her everything. The attack, the corruption, the names of police officers and politicians who were paid off. She had no physical evidence, but her testimony was detailed and damning. Why are you doing this? Hyejin asked. These people will kill you if they find out. They already tried, Amara said, lifting her shirt to show the still healing bullet wound. And they took someone I care about. I'm going to get her back. How? Amara smiled, and it was not a kind smile. By burning their world to the ground. The articles started appearing 2 days later. Hyejin was careful, protected her source, but the information was explosive. Names named. Payments documented. Corruption exposed. The police commissioner was forced to resign. 3 National Assembly members were under investigation. The financial institutions that laundered money for both families were raided. Seoul's underworld was in chaos. And in that chaos, Amara moved like a ghost. She'd changed her appearance, cut her hair short, dyed it a dark brown, wore contact lenses that changed her eye color. She wrapped her chest to hide her feminine shape and dressed in men's clothing. She looked nothing like the woman who died in the river. She used the contacts Dr. Park gave her to navigate the underground networks of Seoul, the defectors, the undocumented workers, the people who knew how to disappear. And she hunted. She tracked the Kim family's operations, listening, learning, waiting for her chance. It came 3 weeks after her resurrection. A rumor on the street. Mrs. Kwan was being held in an abandoned factory in Incheon. The Kim family was planning to execute her in a week's time and send the video to Kwan Jahun as a final insult. Amara knew she couldn't do this alone, which meant it was time for the dead to rise. Kwan Jahun's mansion was a tomb. Amara watched it from the hills above, hidden in the trees. The damage from the attack had been repaired, but the place felt hollow. Fewer lights. Fewer guards. He was grieving. She waited until 3 a.m. Then she climbed the walls the way she'd seen delivery men do during her time there, using handholds in the stone that were invisible unless you knew where to look. She dropped into the garden, silent as a shadow. The koi pond was still. The house was dark except for one light. Kwon Jahun's study. Of course he couldn't sleep. Amara moved through the garden, past the guards. There were only two, and they were exhausted, inattentive, and reached the study window. Through the glass, she saw him. Kwon Jahun sat at his desk, a bottle of soju half empty beside him. He was staring at something in his hands. As Amara moved closer, she saw what it was. A photograph. Amara and his mother in the garden, laughing. Halmoni was showing her a flower. Amara's face was tilted up toward the sun, genuine joy on her face. She didn't know that photo existed. Kwon Jahun's face was devastated. He looked like a man who'd lost everything and was contemplating joining them in death. Amara's heart cracked. She tapped on the window. Kwon Jahun's head snapped up. His hand went to the gun on his desk. He stood, moving toward the window with the predatory grace of a tiger. He saw her reflection in the glass. He froze. Amara removed the face mask she'd been wearing. For a long moment, Kwon Jahun just stared. His face went through a dozen emotions: shock, disbelief, hope, fury. He unlocked the window and threw it open so hard the glass rattled. "You're dead," he whispered in Korean. "I buried you. You're dead." "You buried someone else," Amara replied in Korean. "I'm sorry, but I'm alive." Kwon Jahun grabbed her by the shoulders, hauled her through the window. His hands were shaking as they roamed over her face, her shoulders, as if confirming she was real. Where have you been?" "They shot me and threw me in the river. But I survived. I've been hiding. Planning." "Planning what?" His voice was dangerous now, the shock giving way to anger. "You let me think you were dead for a month. You let me mourn." "I'm sorry," Amara said, and she meant it. "But I had to. They needed to think I was dead so I could move freely. So I could find your mother." Kwon Jahun went still. "You know where she is?" "In Cheon. Abandoned factory near the port. They're going to kill her in 6 days." "How do you know this?" "Because I've been hunting them. I've been learning their patterns, bribing their low-level guys, following their shipments. I know where she is, and I know how to get her back." Kwon Jahun stared at her for a long moment. Then, to her shock, he pulled her into a crushing embrace. "You foolish, brilliant woman," he breathed into her hair. "You could have been killed. Again." "So could you," Amara said, her voice muffled against his chest. "That's why I came back. I need your help." Kwon Jahun pulled back, cupped her face. "Anything. Name it. I need men. Weapons. And I need you to trust me with a plan that might get us all killed." Kwon Jahun smiled, and it was savage and beautiful. "Tell me." The factory in Incheon was a Soviet-era relic, all rusted metal and broken windows. It squatted on the edge of the port like a diseased animal. Kim family guards patrolled the perimeter, 6 outside, probably a dozen inside. Mrs. Kwon was being held in the basement, according to Amara's intelligence. The plan was insane. Kwon Jahun's men would create a distraction at the front, an explosion, gunfire, chaos. While the Kim guards were focused on that, Amara and Kwon Jahun would enter through the old sewer system that connected to the factory basement. "This is suicide," Kwon Jahun had said when she first laid it out. "Yes," Amara agreed. "But it's the only way." Now, at 2 a.m. on a moonless night, they were crouched in a concrete tunnel that smelled of rot and chemicals. Amara had a gun. Kwon Jahun had taught her how to use it during 3 days of intensive training. She was terrified but determined. Kwon Jahun looked at her in the dim light of a tactical flashlight. "Last chance to back out." "Not a chance." He smiled. "You know, I think I'm in love with you." Amara's heart stopped. "What?" "You died. And in the weeks I thought you were gone, I realized that you were the only real thing in my life. Everything else, the money, the power, the empire, it's all smoke. But you're real. Jahun, I know this isn't the time. I know we might die in the next hour. But I needed to say it. You came back from the dead for my mother. You risked everything. And I." Amara kissed him. It was desperate and fierce, tasting of fear and soju and something that might have been love. When they broke apart, Kwon Jahun rested his forehead against hers. "Stay alive," he whispered. "Promise me. Only if you do." Above them, an explosion rocked the night. The distraction had begun. They moved. The tunnel opened into the factory basement through a rusted grate. Kwon Jahun forced it open, and they climbed through into darkness. The basement was a maze of old machinery and shadows. They could hear voices above, shouting, gunfire, chaos. "This way," Amara whispered, following the mental map she'd memorized. They found her in a makeshift cell, a caged-off section of the basement. Mrs. Kwon was huddled in the corner, wrapped in a dirty blanket. She looked tiny, terrified, much older than she had a month ago. "Halmoni," Kwon Jahun breathed. The old woman looked up. Her eyes were vacant at first, then they focused. "Jahuna?" Her voice was a broken whisper. "You came. I knew you'd come." "Of course, Ialma. Always." He shot the lock off the cage. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Footsteps thundered above. They'd been heard. "We need to move," Amara said. Kwon Jahun helped his mother to her feet. They started back toward the tunnel. They were 10 feet away when the basement door burst open and men poured in, guns drawn. "Drop your weapons," the lead man shouted. It was Kim Jae-won himself, the head of the family, a man in his 50s with dead eyes. Kwon Jahun pushed his mother behind him. Amara stood beside him, her gun raised. They were outgunned. 8 against 2. "The dead Maid," Kim Jae-won said, noticing Amara. "You're resilient. Like a cockroach. And you're a coward who targets elderly women." Amara shot back in Korean. Kim Jae-won laughed. "Bold words for someone about to die." Again. "The police are already on their way," Kwon Jahun said. "My men triggered a silent alarm. This factory is surrounded. You shoot us, and you're all going to prison." "I don't think so," Kim Jae-won said. He nodded to his men. "Kill them. All of them." The guns raised. Amara squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the bullets. Then the basement exploded with sound. But it wasn't gunfire. It was flashbang grenades, blinding light, and deafening noise. Through the chaos, men in tactical gear poured into the basement. Not Kim's men. Police. Special forces. Because Amara had made one more call before they'd come here. To reporter Choi Hyejin. And Hyejin had brought the one police unit that wasn't corrupt, the Anti-Corruption Task Force. In the confusion, Kwon Jahun grabbed his mother and Amara, dragging them toward the tunnel. They ran. Behind them, shouting, gunfire, the sounds of arrest. They emerged from the tunnel into the cold night air by the port. Kwon Jahun's car was waiting. They drove. They didn't stop until they were far from Incheon, in the hills outside Seoul. Only then did they stop and breathe. Mrs. Kwon was crying, clinging to her son. Kwon Jahun held her, whispering assurances. Amara sat in the front seat, shaking with adrenaline. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. "Amara." Kwon Jahun's voice from the back seat. She turned. "Thank you," he said simply. She smiled. "We're even now."
Before we see how this ends, let's talk about what just happened. You just invested an hour of your life in Amara's story. You watched her die, resurrect, hunt in the shadows, risk everything for someone else's mother. You felt that. Your heart raced during that car chase. You held your breath in that basement. I gave you that experience. I spent weeks researching, writing, perfecting every emotional beat so you'd feel exactly what you just felt. And now I'm asking for something in return. 2 seconds. Hit subscribe. Because if you take this entire emotional journey, if you let Amara break your heart and put it back together, and you walk away without that one tiny action, you're taking without giving. Don't be that person. Be someone who supports the art that moves them. Someone who pays it forward. Hit subscribe. It's literally the least you can do. Then we'll finish this together.
The news called it the biggest anti-corruption operation in Seoul's history. Dozens of arrests. The Kim family leadership in custody. 3 government officials facing charges. The police commissioner already in prison. And at the center of it all, the testimony of a dead woman. Reporter Choi Hyejin broke the story, protecting Amara's identity but revealing enough to shake the city. Kwon Jahun's empire didn't fall, but it changed. He quietly began transitioning his businesses, divesting from the criminal elements, investing in legitimate enterprises. It would take years, but he was trying. Because he'd learned that love, real love, was stronger than fear. Amara and Mrs. Kwon moved into a smaller house in Jeju Island, away from Seoul's dangers. It was peaceful, beautiful. Halmoni was recovering slowly, her smiles more frequent. Kwon Jahun visited every weekend. On one of those weekends, 6 months after the rescue, he proposed. They were on the beach at sunset. Halmoni was collecting shells nearby, humming to herself. Amara Bennett, Kwon Jahun said, getting down on one knee in the sand. You have changed everything. You've taught me what it means to be brave, to be loyal, to be human. Will you marry me? The ring was simple, a single diamond on a platinum band. Amara looked at this man who'd been a monster and had become human because someone had seen him as worth saving. Yes, she said. They married in a small ceremony, just family and a few trusted friends. Amara wore white. Halmoni cried happy tears, and for the first time in his life, Kwon Jahun looked at peace. 1 year later, they returned to Seoul for the Mid-Autumn Festival Charity Gala at the Shilla Hotel. Amara walked into the Phoenix Hall on Kwon Jahun's arm, wearing a dress of midnight blue silk that had been custom-made in Lagos by designers who knew her sister. She was no longer invisible. People turned to stare. They knew who she was now, the woman who'd survived death, brought down a crime empire, and married the White Tiger. Across the hall, Amara saw a young Filipino server struggling with a heavy tray, looking exhausted and invisible. Amara excused herself from Jahun and crossed the hall. "Excuse me," she said gently in English. "What's your name?" The girl looked startled. "Maria, ma'am." Amara pulled a business card from her clutch. "My mother-in-law needs a companion. Flexible hours, good pay, visa sponsorship. Call this number tomorrow." Maria stared at the card, tears welling in her eyes. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," Amara said, smiling. "Don't be late." She walked back to Jahun, who was watching her with love and admiration. "Building your own empire?" he asked, amused. "Saving one person at a time," Amara corrected. "Someone once told me that real power isn't about fear. It's about lifting others up." "Who told you that?" "You did. You just didn't know it yet." They danced under the crystal chandeliers, and for the first time in decades, the Phoenix Hall witnessed something pure. Two people who'd found light in the darkness and refused to let it go. This is the story of how a Nigerian Maid came back from the dead to save the soul of a monster. It's a reminder that courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about acting despite the terror. Amara Bennett started as invisible, became a ghost, and ended up as a queen. What would you have done in her position? Would you have risked everything for someone you barely knew? Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of courage, love, and redemption. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.